Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. This isn't really Mark Spins, it's done. It's just kind of a weird, kind of special vinyl update. So I want to start by saying this. A few weeks ago, John from Air TV posted a video, it's sort of a rant about vinyl collectors and, the whole scene that we kinda mingle in. And I agree with a good amount of the stuff he was saying, especially referring to, like, those Record of the Month clubs and subscription services and stuff like that. That can kind of get to you for various reasons. But what I kind of zeroed in on, and it might have been a little bit of projection on my part, but just hear me out here. He talked about sort of the snobbish side of things and how people can judge other collectors for the habits they have when it comes to playing or caring for the records, whether it be how they hold them or like how they stack them and all that, little things like that. And I did agree with a lot of the examples he was giving, but one thing that I kind of attached to it that I can be a little bit guilty of in that regard. So this whole vinyl resurgence over the last maybe, 8 years or so, this has been going on basically. Obviously the main thing that kind of spurs this and keeps it going for the most part is a record store day, which I do love and I'm planning on going to it once again later this month. But at the same time, I think it's kind of created this culture in the record collectors, at least my age, in that it kind of revolves around these limited, newer release reissues and like these $30 things that gouge record collectors into getting these, exclusive rainbow printed vinyl things of like the brand new album or whatever, and that's nothing against brand new, but just like these newer pressings, even albums that weren't recorded in a way that would, suit vinyl, really, is kind of, the cool thing to do. And, I'm not bagging anyone that makes that the majority of their collection. I even do that with a good amount of the records I've had here. But at the same time, what I think is kind of lost on a lot of, again, the people in my kind of age bracket that have been getting into record collecting over the last few years is the art of just going to a record store and just crate digging through old vintage records to get into older music that way, because that's been my real gateway over the last few years when it comes to getting into classic rock and stuff like that, because it's just to me it's just a really fun way of getting into old music from the 60s and 70s and 80s and stuff through the format it was initially made on, I don't know, it's just fun to go to a record store with like $20 in your hand and come out with like 6 great albums that you had always been kind of curious about, but from like artists that the hits from, and just getting all kinds of pleasant surprises and stuff. I just think it's a fun process. So that kind of leads into what I'm doing today. So basically throughout all of March, I've been kind of ignoring newer releases, maybe getting to one every week or so, but for the most part, getting into a lot of stuff from the 70s and 80s, and even maybe a little bit before that, which we'll be getting into, and just basically whenever I'm in a certain area of San Diego I've never been to, or I've only been to a couple times, or maybe I'm up in Orange County or something, I basically go on the Record Store Day website, punch in the zip code I'm in, and just see if there's anything nearby. And as a result, this is from a handful of locations this pile I'm going to be going through. And keep in mind, again, this is only stuff I've gotten since March. And just to make it a little bit more fun, keep up with the Record Store Day theme, I even have the Lose Records shirt to rep right here. This is my local one I've been going to for basically every Record Store Day since 2012, Black Fridays included. The records I'm getting here are sorted in alphabetical order by the record store they're from, because I want to, if you're in the area of, starting California, I want to be able to plug these record stores in case you didn't know about them, because I really feel like these places need more support beyond just, the one day a year. And as a result, it'll be a little bit awkward because there are some recurring artists that I won't be able to talk about all at once, the albums I have from them on here, but, it's kind of a give and take. Also, there are a couple records here that have a weird enough story that I'm going to be saving them for my next Mad Sounds episode with Johnny, because they kind of deserve their own little segment to talk about the stories behind those. I'm not really giving myself a time parameter for talking about each one of these, so this video will probably be divided into multiple parts, and some of these I will maybe give a sentence about, some I could go on for 5 minutes about, we'll see. And the first record store I went to was Alma Sound in La Jolla. I'd never been to this place before. They kind of have a lot of audio equipment, and they sort of have a record area alongside that. And I picked up a couple records here. It's a little bit on the pricey side, but it's still really good condition stuff, so I think it was worth it at the end of the day. So the first one I'm showing you guys is Genesis, Nursery Crime. So I did have a couple Genesis albums prior to this, but this is the first one I have from the earlier, like, Peter Gabriel fronted era. And apparently this isn't like one of the, you know, super celebrated albums from that time. You know, like down the road would definitely love to get like The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, since I remember really loving that album when I rented it from the library a few years ago. But that's not taking away too much from Nursery Crime. By the way, I do love this album cover here with the story of this girl just decapitating people with a croquet mallet. That's just fantastic, and it ties into the first track really nicely. And that first track, The Musical Box, is definitely the biggest highlight from this thing, which is a pretty good classic prog record, all things considered. I will say the production kind of lets it down a little bit. It sounds a little muffled at some points, and I feel like it's not just because of the pressing and stuff like that, since it does look like it's in pretty good condition. It's even kind of affirmed because I saw that on the Wikipedia page from like an AllMusic review that said something similar. But yeah, I'm kind of looking to build up my Genesis collection a little bit more, since they have just so many albums and evolutions throughout the 70s and 80s and stuff. So yeah. And the second one from this store was Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. I've definitely been a casual fan of Motley Crue through the hits for since I was like a kid, basically, since I got that like Red, White, and Crue compilation from my mom when I was like 10. So it's nice to actually have a full-length album from them physically now, especially one with such a gatefold as this, which really tells you everything. And next to Dr. Feelgood, this probably has the most classic singles of any Motley Crue album. Like, you got the title track, Shout at the Devil, Looks to Kill, Too Young to Fall in Love, and their classic cover of Helter Skelter, which really gave it the metal kick in the pants that it needed. I'm not saying anything bad about, you know, the original, which was a totally pioneering song by the Beatles, but I feel like this is a cover that definitely needed to happen. This really is like a quintessential kind of a glam metal album. I feel weird calling it hair metal because like it kind of preceded, you know, the Poisons and like Warrants and Wingers of the world, you know. There's definitely a lot more of a grit. The edginess is a little bit more believable, I suppose. I mean, I doubt you would have seen a pentagram on the sleeve here from, like, Enough's Enough. What really caught me off guard about this album, honestly, is the lyrical themes in a couple of songs, because you know, you got your edgy devil worship on Shout the Devil, you got your sleazy tracks about, you know, hot chicks on the Sunset Strip in 1982, you know, all that cool stuff. And then you got a song like Bastard, which is basically from the perspective of a rape victim killing their rapist. And then on the opposite side of things, you have the song 10 Seconds to Love, and this is a weirdly recurring thing. Pseudo hair metal bands from like 1982, 1983, and I'm saying this because like on the second to last track on Def Leppard's Pyromania, there's a song called Action Not Words, that's basically about filming a sex tape with your partner. It's very prophetic in that regard. And on 10 Seconds to Love, it basically talks about the same thing. I got my camera, make a star out of you, let's inject it photographic down to the subway, let the boys have it. I get, you know, songs about sex, but this is a very specific aspect of it that begs for a lot of questions that are not being answered. Oh, and the song itself, in other lyrics, is kind of gross, talking about, like, premature ejaculation and stuff, trying to make it sound cool and feeling miserably. But that's, like, the one bad song on this album. I'm not gonna restrain myself from the tangents with this stuff, because it just gets too damn interesting. But yeah, not taking away because of that one song from the rest of this album, this is still kind of a landmark album as far as 80s metal go. So yeah, that's all the Alma Music stuff. So, a little backstory. A couple weeks ago, SourceFed, one of my favorite YouTube channels of all time, was canceled by their network. I made my fair share of tweets about it. I was thinking about making a video about it. Later that night, after their farewell live stream, one of their hosts, Candice Carrizales, did sort of a stand-up set at this show. It was up in LA, which is like a couple hours from me, but I've been a fan of that channel since like 2012 when they first launched, so this would be a pretty fitting closure kind of note to go out on. Side note, I'm actually going to be seeing Mike Falzone and Elliot Morgan at a stand-up show later tonight, which is a weird coincidence now I'm thinking about it. But also, just because I happen to be in the Hollywood area, I had to take 5 minutes to stop at Amoeba. I'd been there a couple of times. You guys might remember my What's in My Bag, unofficial What's My Bag video from early last year. I believe this is my third time there and didn't really have much time to look around, but I still managed to get a couple of records while I was there. The main one, takeaway really, Tom Petty, Long After Dark. Tom Petty's a guy that I've been a fan of for a long time, and it's just awesome to, be building up my collection of his. I've got that, right now I've got that whole streak from You're Gonna Get It to this album with that first streak of classic records, really. And this one, really the only big hit on it is You Got Lucky, which is still a really good song, but I'm sure it kind of alienated fans at the time for being a lot more synth-driven, a lot more poppy. I still really like that song, even though he does come off like a douche in the lyrics, if you really, look at him. But I digress. I wouldn't call this quite my favorite Tom Petty album by any means. But it's probably his catchiest. Like, this came out in 1982, and you can definitely tell that he was getting inspired by his contemporaries, like the Cars especially. I see a lot of, early Cars influence in some of the more tight construction and synth-based hooks in some of this stuff, maybe some of the quirkier moments. Especially We Stand a Chance. That's one deep cut that, when I first heard this album when I was maybe 11 or 12, that is just, one of the first times that an earworm was so strong that it's I just kept playing that song over and over and over again on my tiny little iPod Nano. Tracks like that, Change of Heart, which I actually do have a red 7-inch of, Straight Into Darkness, and probably the one song on here that really connected with me lyrically, One Story Town, which especially connects with me now. In general, though, the lyrics, even though they're printed on here, are kind of the weak point of this album. It doesn't really have that same sense of storytelling that a lot of the last couple albums before this did. It's a lot more general, kind of relationship-based stuff, but it doesn't really take too much away from some incredible hooks and just a lot of the great song construction, and that Tom Petty has always been a master at, in my opinion. Really like the design on the sleeve, by the way, I just gotta say. But anyway, I'm really hoping to catch Tom Petty for the first time at Kaboo in Del Mar, since they really came through with that lineup this year. So, I don't know, maybe stay tuned for that. The second album I got there, and I just happened to see it in the corner of my eye in the bargain bin, I figured why not, is George Harrison's Cloud 9. I was listening to this album, and I realized there's a strange amount of connection to Tom Petty in that regard. Both because, they were members of the Traveling Wilburys together, and also because they're both albums from the late-ish 70s, from, these people that had kind of been on the skids as far as success in their career for the last few years prior to that, and came back with these huge pop hits, and with Tom Petty referring to Full Moon Fever, obviously. And with George Harrison, the big hit from this being, I Got My Mind Set on You, one of the most repetitive pop songs of all time, basically. Oh, I just noticed this is a promotional copy sent by Record Club. That's nice. And yeah, this album's also produced by Jeff Lynne, but I feel like, unlike Full Moon Fever, this one isn't quite as timeless. You get a lot more of those 80s synths in there. It's funny, I was listening recently to a podcast interview with Lenny Kravitz, which seems like a totally random thing to hear me out, and the interviewer was talking to him about how even in the 80s, he was putting out stuff that could really appeal to any era, and he was talking about how, when you're putting in those kind of big gated drums and kind of in-your-face kind of synth sounds, and your career spans multiple decades, that is a point that's going to immediately stick out like a sore thumb. And I think that is definitely the case on an album like this. There are some great songs like This Is Love and When We Was Fab, the other two singles from this thing. This Is Love is definitely a blatant 80s pop song, but I feel like it embraces it to a degree enough that it really works. And When We Was Fab just sounds like a cut-off revolver, basically. Fitting because it is a song about his history with the Beatles, and the whole album features Ringo on drums, which is kind of cool. As for the rest of it, I don't really see a lot of the praise that this album supposedly gets, but I like having any Beatle-related stuff on vinyl, so I'll take it.